Okay, we're on the weekend of May 21st, May 22nd, and this is the Bucky Call. And let's start off the event. Kelly, how are you feeling and what do you expect from today?
I'm feeling much better, and I just expect to learn. So that's how I feel. Susan, how are you feeling and what do you expect?
I'm feeling happy to see everybody, and I'm looking forward to having my perspective expanded. Manu, how are you feeling and what do you expect?
I'm feeling good. I was in communication with Anne this morning. She was also fumbling like me, trying to find to see if the link worked. I'm going to send a message, WhatsApp message to warn her about connecting to the new link. Otherwise, I feel grateful. I'm happy that Kelly looks a lot more energized than last week. Susan and Steve, I miss you on Wednesday. I didn't want you, my apology. It was my birthday, so I was away.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Happy birthday.
happy birthday, Manu.
Okay. So what I expect is that we continue on what we've been doing and then exploring how understanding the me and aligning it to general principles allows us to kind of redesign our environment for the better and for the most people possible. That's what I expect. Joe, how do you feel? What do you expect?
I'm feeling great and I'm very happy to see everyone. It's really wonderful to see all my friends on Saturday night. I'm expecting to understand this cosmic hierarchy and as well this relationship to self and how these generalized principles actually apply to our everyday lives. I did some introspection this week about that, about how generalized principles, can be used as a way of a compass for how we live our lives. So I'm looking forward to, going through this hierarchy a little bit more. I know we only got halfway through it last week. And Steve, how do you feel? What do you want to get out of today?
Well, I'm feeling really good. I noticed that Zoom has been having a couple of issues for me, so I went and got my computer checked out and serviced over the week, hoping that we wouldn't have any reoccurrence this week of anything. And then I don't think I helped the situation because in the email that I sent out, I used the standard link. But when I went into this meeting, that link was different than the one in the email. So I'm not exactly sure how that discrepancy occurred. I do know that Zoom is inviting everybody to update their software. So now we have an updated link. And before I send out the next invitation, I will double check the links in order to, so that nobody's wasting their time. I'm afraid that some people made an effort to get into this call tonight, and because of the faulty links and because of the fact that the updated link wasn't sent out until 10 minutes after the call, maybe we missed some people. So what I commit to do is as soon as this recording is ready tonight or tomorrow, I'll send out the recording to everybody with an apology on the updated link. I'm really excited to be talking about Bucky's 18 Me's. I think this is really important, his cosmology and these hierarchies. And some of the questions that those who've attended the calls over the last 4 or 5 weeks, because we've been on basically the same topic, the way Bucky went in Synergetics. And it's been interesting to see the questions that developed and the clarity that's come out and some of the unclarity. And so I've been reviewing some of these recordings and been making notes, and maybe we'll have a time where the questions that came up in these calls, if there's been some resolution, we'll present those. And maybe there's no way to resolve because maybe it's just a matter of how I'm relating to what I'm getting from Bucky, who is constantly evolving in what he was putting out. So that's my story for today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We can get started. Any comments or questions on anything I just said? Wonderful. So we will go into this. Let me share with you a little bit about how we've been approaching this and what's going on here. first we went through Synergetics 1056.10, which was basically a narrative definition of each of these concepts from 38 to 34. And then we started beginning, here comes some more people. And then we started doing Synergetics 1056.20, cosmic hierarchy of comprehensively embracing and permeating generalizations of generalization. And he reviewed these from a formulaic point of view. And if you'll notice here, it says see section 106.11, because in the 105.611, because in 105.610, he then breaks into subsections on each of these. After that, we did this, we went through this and had our discussions here. A big revelation was that people were very surprised to see universe not at the top, that cosmic integrity was at the top, synergy was next, nature was next, unknown was next, and universe was listed next in the hierarchy. That surprised everybody. And then we went through in part 2 on 1056.20. During the week of April 30th, May 1st, we went from 33 to 26 and talked about these topics. And then over here in May 7th and 8th, we did part 3, which we did 25 through 18. This is very significant because at the bottom of section 1056.20, Bucky has a formula down here that he put together. And basically, the week that we did this is the week we discussed all the elements in that formula. Last week, we tackled it one more time. This time we went and started with the me's. There are 18 me's in this hierarchy, and we went from 18 to 13. And this week, we're going to be going from there. And I thought it might be good just to quickly go down through and review 18 through 13, see if there are any comments on that, and then move 12 through 5. And if we're really hollow buns here, we can get all the way down to 1. And then we've got that formula that we talked about before. But we're going to go and have a good discussion as far as we can. Any comments or questions on the overview that I just gave you? By the way, I've been taking these Bucky recordings and making them episodes. I'll be giving an episode number. So this week, April 13th was episode 13. April 30th was episode 14. Then we had episode, I've got the number screwed up here, but they're all being numbered and they're going to be organized that way. So when you find the links, you can kind of say, okay, I want the one just before this or the one just after that. So I've gone to that issue, gone to that organizational style, and I'm open for feedback on it to see how it works. Okay, so let's, if there are no comments or questions there, let's go ahead and that N goes down here.
We've got Anne now.
That's what?
We have Anne.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Cool.
Hi, Yuan.
Gee, Ann, I'm not sure how you got in because I didn't let you in, but I'm sure glad you did. And I'm so grateful that you did. So, Ann, we were just beginning our conversation here. And Joe, I think it's okay. Ann, how are you feeling today? What are your expectations? Then we'll just go ahead and let Joe start reading.
Yeah, sure. I'm feeling, I'm glad to be in, right? So I was a bit concerned whether I was able to get in or not. So I'm glad. And what I expect to get out today is, like we are talking about the me and the 18, right? I really want to see by the end of us getting to the number 1, how much more are we going to discover who we are as a me. That will be very exciting for me. Yeah. And I just want to put it out there. The next 2 weeks, actually, I won't be around because the events going on next week. I'll be in Bangkok, and the week after that, I'll be in London. And I think this one to Kelly. Kelly, this is for you. We are going to be featured, our school, in the Queen celebrating her Platinum Jubilee, will be featured in her commemorative book in the school. And so therefore we're going to go, we've been invited for the book launch in London. So this is how far, because you've seen how we started, and every step of the way, everything we've learned from you, one of your training, you opened us up to the point of, making us think global. I remember that so distinctly. I just want to let you know. So thank you very much, Kelly, and that's how I feel. Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Steve.
Good. Thank you, Anne. Boy, I'm so glad we did that at the beginning of this call. I'm so glad that you did that. Thanks so much for sharing, Anne. You're an inspiration on this call, and what you're doing is amazing. So we're delighted, and I think we can all acknowledge Kelly at some level.
Yes.
All right. Hey, Joe,
Yes.
are you ready to go?
Sure. What number?
Let's just start right up there. We're going to review down through. Go ahead and read 18 through 13 all the way through. We'll take questions after those, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
There you go.
Start with 18.
I
Or
guess so.
start with 10. All right. Or 1056.2, cosmic hierarchy and comprehensively embracing and permeating generalizations of generalizations equals to GG. And so 18, me, intuitive, synergetically coordinate, sense, intellect, exploratory sensor, glimpser, initiator. 17, me, intellect, mathematics, logical, conceptioning. 16, me, sensorial, subjective, objective, brain, neuron, storing, retrieving, commanding. 15, me, memory banked, sorted out concepts and data, booked, libraried, fitched. Microfiche.
That's an old thing that we used to do, Joe, back in the old days.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that term.
It's back in the old days, they started taking old books and documents, and they would microfiche and they put them on little tiny films.
That's right. I do remember them in the library. It was
Yeah,
the
before
historical
Google.
section. That's right.
Before you were born.
Yeah, it was, I do. I've seen those in movies as well.
Yeah.
So computer programmed, interrelated, memory banked around planet, retrieval through satellite relay anywhere.
And just let me insert here, Joe. This is kind of hard for me to read like this. And I've noted that it's easier for me when I break it down into one sentence, or at least break it into lines so that words flow together. This seemed to be so hard to comprehend. So I'm hoping that when I submit these out, that it kind of helps. And anytime you see the little dots around here, then you know that I've added something. Otherwise, everything is exactly the way Bucky says it. Okay, if you want to continue.
Absolutely. 15, me, memory banked. I'm going to read the next version again. Booked, library, microfiche, computer programmed, interrelated, memory bank around planet, retrieval through satellite relay anywhere. 14, me, biophysically, atomic physics, nuclear structures. 13, me, biochemically, exploratory chemistry, behavioral proclivities, atomic compound structures as atomic complexes.
Cool. Comments or questions on any of these? I have a few thoughts on this.
I would like to comment and
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Manu.
I would just like to comment on the whole process. Is that it seems to be like if you go from the bottom top with the celerity of information. You see, before it was just storing, then you start retrieving, and then you retrieve faster and faster, and there are feedback loops. So it is our sensorial capability that is actually improving and allowing us to become aware of what is, and progressively of the general laws that apply, that embrace, how will I call it? Can you indulge the word higher and higher?
I see
That's
what
that was my comment.
I see what you mean, Manu, because when I look at the very first one, 18, it's outlooking, it's glimpser, it's intuitive. So it's me apprehending. And then it gets next into me sensing, into me comprehending. And so in Bucky's hierarchy, this almost makes me, I love the idea of the fact that us being beings of apprehension, yeah, is even a higher order than us being beings of comprehension.
I kind of agree in that point, and because 18 seems to be about apprehending, I'm getting a glimpse of. I think of the circles of irrelevancy, and I see everything that's definite and clear, and then I see these edges of tantalizingly, irrelevant or tantalizingly unclear, like I'm able to glimpse out at something bigger than me and apprehend something. And then I start logically conceptualizing it, and that's more of a comprehension, maybe. I think to go along with what Susan is saying. So that's one thing. Go ahead.
It is progressive. At each stage, there's that manifested.
Yeah.
Yes.
We always experimenting, storing, retrieving, identifying patterns, experimenting them, and then evolving our comprehension, apprehension. It's not only comprehension, because everything that evolves has its own set of problems of apprehension.
I think the word commanding is so integrate in everything that's going on, because you're actually storing something. When you're retrieving it, you're reviewing it, and you're learning to command it.
Yes.
And I find commanding, I never thought I would see Fuller use a word like commanding. But having seen it, it sort of makes me believe that he's saying you store, you retrieve, and then when you review it or you retrieve it, you're learning to command it.
Yeah, I totally think that's the same way too. I started out in computers on before MS-DOS. I was on a CP/M operating system, and everything was command-based. In other words, we'd have the data on the disk, but we'd have to write the command in order to do the retrieving, and we'd have to write the command in order to store it, right? And back in the day, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I had 7-inch floppy disks. And I'd put in the command to store the data, and half the time it wouldn't store the data. It was like totally unstable. I was commanding it and it wouldn't do it. But I think I agree with you, Kelly. I think that's what that's about. It's about how I'm manipulating the storing and the retrieving, like in the sense of computer commands.
And I would say at that same moment, at that 16 moment, we're calibrating, because we brought that the conception has come into our sensorial experience. And I think that, as we're trying to be local problem solvers, one of the reasons we can be anti-entropic locally is because we've used our senses to be able to calibrate the things that we at first apprehended, the things that we then built logical bridges to, and we comprehended, and then we bring it in and we sensorially experience it, and then we can command it.
But I would like to highlight how commanding is genetically, I'll put it, linked to repeating.
Ah, yeah.
It is linked to the process of learning, in that you see it repeat, and then you create the condition to kind of simulate what you've seen. You've seen the pattern. So commanding means when I say Susan, and you say yes, it came from us interacting again and again.
So you calibrate that.
Where it becomes almost you identifying with Susan.
So calibrating has a relationship with this commanding. That's what you're saying, right?
And I would say because
I'm saying there is calibration, there is repeat, calibration,
so the pattern
understanding, and command.
repeats, and then we understand it and we calibrate to it.
Okay, I have something to add. When we started like 18, looking at me, right? I really like it that the number 18 is intuitive, right? The me intuitive, that is encompassing, including all the others below it, right? The issue I realized also from this diagram as to why intuition became this intuitive nature of us has become so much less important in the eyes of so many people, because the minute we went into intellect and biochemistry and biophysicality, into atomic physics and all that, then the importance of who we are shifted into that area to the point where the intuitive part, I feel, has actually been sidelined. And this is one of the biggest things that we were in what we've been trying to do, has been to get this back for the kids, because it's completely, the human part of who we are has completely been systemized out of the education system. Yeah. So like kids, especially Asia, they're not allowed to guess. So when you go out into college, you're supposed to be able to do guesstimates, right? And it is a skill you have to have. But at a young age, they're already told they cannot guess. They must know the answers. So for many places around the world, and I realize it's not just in the Asian countries, the intuition part has actually been completely sidelined. Okay, so that's just a thought there. I don't know whether it comes back. Yeah.
I guess that would impact creativity in general.
Yeah.
But there's interesting when I look at number 18 and I look at number 17, I just think and my mind goes in different directions, but I just think of system 1 and system 2 with Daniel Kahneman and the idea of intuition and our conscious thinking. So that system 1 is just our intuitive type of thinking and our automatic way we process information and act. And system 2 is our conscious way of thinking. And I think Bucky actually captured that here many years before Daniel Kahneman did. So that's the way I see it, 18 and 17.
I have an idea here, which is the whole of this is actually kind of always kind of fractally hidden repeating. In other words, in comment to what Anne say, is when we let the stationary emotional or intuitive of us get in the way, that we have a problem. So the process of thinking involves first channeling emotions, because your energy is flowing around you. There are feedbacks. You got to channel those emotions. Second, you have to sequence with the flow of energy that is flowing, with the flow of energy around. And then you have to merge your emotion with that energy or energy that you have recorded, to see what if, to see what is happening. And that is the whole, in my opinion, the marriage of that you call intuition. Because intuition involves that the sensors that you have capture information, store or retrieve it, and that information is swirling around you, and your emotions are kind of marriage to that, into thinking wider, into, you know, imagining wider, into experimenting wider.
Cool.
Um,
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm just, this idea of channeling emotions, I think is a very important thing. I just haven't figured out my question around it yet. We can come back to it.
Well, I think it has everything to do with number 3, right? Emotions basically are a biochemical response to stimulation that is part of our biophysicality, our biophysicalness, right? In other words, I have nuclear structures, I have a physical body, but then I have these chemicals inside of me, and these endorphins are all, I mean, they go from rage to lust to excitement, you know, and although I have a relatively static body, I am not static in my relationship to my environment, man. I'm a biochemical mess at times, right?
Right.
And I think that that's where this concept of emotionality really comes in, as this biochemical thing. People, and Susan can talk more about this, but the cells in my body can actually become addicted to endorphins that create stress and trauma. And if I don't, if I am not feeling stress and trauma, I will actually go out and look for it. And I'll say something just to maintain some stability. So I think this biochemical part is an important aspect of my beingness.
And the sequencing, that challenging and sequencing is the only thing that allows you not to become too early ideological. Just choosing side. That will prevent you from. I mean, we have the whole of this thing. You know, it's known that most of the breakthrough discoveries are made earlier in age by people who are in their 20s, 30s. If you look at really major, for example, Einstein, he was 26. But that thing had been around for many, that, you know, a lot of people came close to say energy and matter, there's an equivalence, a lot. Many of the, yes, but they were locked in ideologies.
Now,
and sometimes they suppress themselves.
Possibly by us hanging out and doing this as we age, we'll maybe get to some more outlandish, wild, and fantastic associations later in life.
and to reaffirm what Manu is saying and what our current conversation is about, Bucky actually takes this meanness over here and combines it with his other symbols to create humanity as a whole, cult and nations, you know, and ideology. Those are all parts of me as I, you know, and we're looking at the basic structure of those things now. So here we go. I hope I supported you in that comment. Any other comments or questions here before we move down to 12? Okay. Here we go, Joe. Whoops, I need to put a page break in there. All righty, here we go. We can take this out and continue. You can start from 12.
So 12, me, scientist, exploratory, science history, cosmology, cosmogony. Me, scientist, applied mechanics, structures, electrical and chemical engineering.
Let's pause right there. Does anybody know what cosmogony is? I actually looked it up to get prepared for this, and I cannot remember what it is right now.
Is the way of being, I think.
All right, let's oh, good grief. Okay, hang on a second. I'm just going to go look for it.
It's the the branch of science that deals with the origin of the universe, especially the solar system.
Aha, that's right. With the solar system, cosmogony had to do with the solar system. Cosmology has to do with the whole universe. Cosmogony has to do with the solar system. Leave it up to Bucky to introduce a new word for me.
I think cosmology is logos, how it works, the logic of it working. Cosmogony, it has like your genes. Where does it come from? How is it its origin? Its way of being. How does it come to be?
And for me, it's interesting to note that after we have to deal with our biochemical responses through our physical body, that the next layer of hierarchy that Bucky defines is this scientist, this exploratory scientist, which is different than 18, which was the exploratory glimpsor, right? It's a whole level of perception. And I think that, to what Anne said earlier, like in most school systems, the idea of being intuitive about anything and taking a guess, that students are scolded for guessing, you know? And I remember Jordan Peterson this last week, I saw a little thing on him, and he was at some college someplace giving a talk on personal sovereignty and ethics. And the last question was, well, what advice do you have for students who are coming in, who are maybe going to college or just leaving college? And Jordan Peterson actually got quite emotional when he said, don't be afraid to be who you are. Don't be afraid to do something different than what people tell you to do. That in our world today, we've got this white privilege thing. We've got all these things going on. Everybody's feeling guilty about everything. Don't do that. Trust yourself. Be who you are. And I think that's the invitation that we're seeing here with Bucky. Comments, questions?
Like, you can try to be somebody different, but guess what? It's not going to work.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the trust yourself has everything goes, there's always a duality at play. When you say trust yourself, it can easily become, you're as hard as wood. That's what you are. I don't think that that's what Jordan Peterson is saying.
Right.
He's saying, let yourself experiment.
Yeah.
But there's always a change, always a change.
Besides being,
Yes.
oh, go
So
ahead.
you can, I got this guy who say he lives in Connecticut, and it looks like Connecticut has the highest per capita income in the US. I didn't know that. Right? But he says in Connecticut, there are people who live by themselves, right? They live by themselves, and they are honest in living by themselves, in that they try the best for their little family. But next door, there are places where to go to school, a child needs police protection in the same state, in a small state. What does that mean? Is it going to be always like that if nothing is done? If you are not involved in what is going, or you don't feel involved in what's going, well, it's going to swallow you. Because remember, your anti-entropic construct is always valid within well-defined boundaries. And if those boundaries are evolving and you're not aware of them, something will happen, not always to the good. So you have to be yourself and open to information flow. And that's what we call, we discussed this word, what was it again, Susan? To be equanimous. We talk about it for a long. Learn to be sometime equanimous. It's not easy because we always swore and capture by all the emotions that lock us into a paradigm in which we feel a sense of security.
Comments, questions?
It's really well said. I mean, one of the things that I always remember, and it's somewhat trivial, but it was Steve Jobs's commencement speech where he says, "Don't be trapped by dogma." And it's the same thing that Manu was talking about just now, is this idea of being open to new information. And he said, you know, essentially dogma is living with the results of other people's thinking. So that once you get trapped in these systems, that you're only thinking one way. And then, you know, just essentially follow your intuition, follow your inner voice, and don't let the opinions of others drown out what you believe to be true, and to have the courage to follow your intuition. But it's
And
all related. Manu just gave a very academic and more real example.
And this comes back to Ann's point about how this intuitive part of me gets left behind. Steve Jobs said, you know, he quit school because he wasn't getting anything out of it and decided to go audit a calligraphy class. And so he's auditing calligraphy classes, just trusting himself. And then suddenly Steve Wozniak comes up to him and says, let's do a computer. He says, yeah, I know how to make it really cool. So, you know, and if he hadn't quit school and started studying calligraphy, if he hadn't been intuitive, started to apprehend something new and then comprehend it, logically conceptualizing it, then he got together with Steve Jobs. And this is kind of metaphysical over here, and this is kind of physical, right? In some way, between 18 and 12 and 17 and 11, they kind of line up in terms of their duality or their relationship. Comments, questions? Okay. Which one are we on now, Joe?
Actually, that is like the metaphysical and the physical, which is what, 33 and 32?
At the very top.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what number are we on?
I don't know. I think we're somewhere around 10, but I'm not sure.
11.
Thank you. I mean, you might think as the person I was reading, I would know that, but 11, me, scientist applied. Oh, wait a minute. I read 11. We're on 10, right?
We left off at 11, I thought, but I don't
Okay.
know. It's
Me,
worth reading.
scientist, applied mechanics, structures, electrical and chemical engineering. Me, common sense, culture, tribal, group communication of group sensing, hunting, dancing, philosophy needs. Me, art, individual sense of intuitive communication, expression of individual philosophy and opinion. Me, incisively disciplined. Statistics, written communication, and social history. Ideograms, hieroglyphs, I'm sorry, phonetics and script, accounting, historical data.
Okay, let's pause right there. Is everybody grokking this? How he's establishing levels of hierarchy in terms of applying our intuition.
But I'm struck by the 8, and more precisely by the word incisively disciplined.
Yeah.
And you have to look at, if you look at the history of Bucky, for 50 years, he was relentless, noting down things that he did in life. His journal was, I mean, his flow of writing is actually just transcribing his journal.
The chrono files.
Yes, he was ultra disciplined to take the time. I mean, I have none of those qualities. I'm just, I'm serious.
No,
He was disciplined.
Well, you just have them in your mind. You're better than that. So you don't need the
No.
chrono files.
But that's false. That's exactly, my mind will always mislead me. and always, and my mind will forget. My mind will forget, always. But I'm saying this word, me incisively discipline, is quite something that attract my attention.
And I do appreciate that. So I'm the person that has a huge nerve between my right hand and whatever memory centers up there. So I'll take notes even if I never look at them again, because it helps me remember. But I do think it's delightful that Bucky has dance above art. And both of those are above the incisive discipline of writing down all the shit you think. So yeah, maybe we all need to dance.
Susan, what happened to you when you go out on a run, right? You're running and you see something that has a glimpse that gives you an inspiration. You know, you think about something that was completely, you know, that is art. Imagining something,
Yes.
Triggered by just your sight coming across some form. Now, if you just continue running, what does it take you? Either you are superwoman and you run and exclude everything else that you could see during that run and focus on it until you find a way to scribe it down or to draw it down into something that you can use later, or you were prepared to have something that allows you to capture at the moment. Otherwise, that window goes. It's happened to me so many times. By the time you're back after running 30 minutes, an hour, finish, it's gone. You can't even remember what it was.
I can't capture it.
But I mean, this is a really important point in general. The written word, what it provides you with. It provides you with a history, and it allows you to, otherwise you're just dealing with memory. I don't know if anybody's seen The Ascent of Man, the series. It's really, it's with Jacob Bernowski. It's excellent. But they talk about how, you know, we moved from being a tribal culture, just as Bucky is captured right here, and how then the written word kind of allows you to deviate from just thinking from what the elder's perspective, because all you know is what you're learning from in the elders in the tribe. But as the written word comes into play and things like it's the, I'll put a link in the chat in a minute, but it's The Ascent of Man. Essentially the moment you start to, and I forget which episode it is, that you start to have the written communication, you start to learn from your mistakes from the past. And you start to understand, like, historically why people believe certain things that they did. And you move away from just your memory to actually having something that it's no longer an oral culture, it becomes a written culture. So this also impacts the idea of what it means for the idea of self.
So another cool thing that I'm noticing here is that he's talking about group communication of what the group is thinking. And that has changed so much since Bucky left us. There's a new culture out there that I'm only on the fringes of appreciating, that you could look on your phone. What's coming up for what the group is thinking is going to show up every time I turn my phone on. That this whole, in one category of thinking, that's the fourth dimension, is group mind. And that's actually being able to communicate and intersect with that seems like it's at a level that Bucky puts just above art, and then above this idea that you're going to have the self-discipline to write down what you're incisively thinking. So I think it's interesting that the whole idea of the concepts that he was talking about are currently evolving, and then evolution is being fueled by technology. And I just barely appreciate it. I don't understand it.
Cool. Comments and questions? I noticed that Joe put the link out there to Ascent of Man. And I put a link out there regarding this concept that Bucky is sharing here regarding the idea of art as one level of hierarchy of meanness. And the other level is this incisively disciplined written. Susan talked about how she takes notes, even if she's never going to look at them again. And I think we can discuss the idea of having a neurosensory reaffirmation of the thought I'm thinking and actually translating that into a word that's in my own brain and then writing it down with my hand. There's a process of integration there that's really valuable. I don't need to look at my notes again. Making the notes actually help me find my own words and regurgitate those words. We could actually find that up here higher, and we're going to see more of it as we go. Here's verbally communicating. But I wanted to comment on this art thing. I just listened this last week and I put a link to it. There's a guy named Craig Childs, who's he's a guide, a tour guide in the Colorado Plateau. And he's written a book on this cave art and on the hieroglyphs that the Native Americans left on the rocks. And he's been looking at these things for 20, 30 years and thought they were really cool. But then he goes out and talks to a Hopi elder and finds out that that cave art actually has a story to it. That there's a woman here maybe having a baby, or there's this river going down here with dots along there. You know, he's looking at it, not understanding the tribal culture, number 10. He looks at the art and says, oh, well, why did they put this here? And then the Hopi elder comes up and says, well, this is a map of this river. This dot represents that, and that dot represents that. So here's the cultural tribal guy relating the incisively disciplined interpretation of the art. But, you know, it has to be passed down verbally and orally from one person to the next until we devise ideograms, hieroglyphs, and phonetics and script. And then now I create a book that I can issue a key to, and people for hundreds of years will get fairly close to what the meaning was that I was trying to put down. You know, there's always going to be some loss. Anybody who's done any translation and taken like German poetry and tried to translate it into English, or take the Hebrew Bible and translate it into German or English, like Martin Luther did and Everett Fox did, there's something's going to be lost in that translation. No matter how incisively disciplined we are, as I shift from one language to another, there's going to be something lost. But interesting that Bucky says art here, a form of an individual sense of intuitive communication, expression of individual philosophy and opinion. Here are these Native Americans doing these glyphs on these rocks, expressing their individual philosophy or opinion, and their tribal culture can read that, but we can't. We need words. And this is a great level of understanding. And I think as much as I hate emojis, and I do not use emojis, to stick an emoji by a word really does tell me how I'm feeling about that word, doesn't it? And so now we have a combination of incisively disciplined phonetics together with artistic things, and thus we communicate. Comments?
What I would like to add here is just a general formula onto this thing. Whatever successive pair that you take here, whatever, 10, 11, 10, 9, or 9, 8, you always have the unity of multiplication and division, the gravity and the radiation. Say, for example, what you were commenting on, Steve, now. We take number 9. Number 9 is symbolic, is multiplicative. You agree with me?
Yes.
Number 8 is divisive. It is focused. You see that?
So like statistics are focused.
Yes, if you take number 9 and number 8, Same if you take number 10 and number 9. Same you take number 11 and number 8. That is progressively embracing. And it's always that duality that is at play. Or that is the DNA of this ordering.
And DNA goes back to the up here where the nuclear structure of my me-ness, my biophysically me.
Yeah.
So DNA is an appropriate absolute paradigm to bring into this conversation.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you take the whole of Bucky's hierarchy here, at every level, every pair is submitted to that duality, is at play, is everywhere.
Thank you, Manu, because I tend to think of whenever I spot duality to realize that it's a restriction of my perspective. It doesn't have to be.
And I also like the fact that, let me see if I'm, okay. I also like the fact that, you know, the science part includes the common sense, the culture, tribe, and art, and so on, because people tend to split them up, you know. But I really like the fact that now, because earlier was intuition, right? And then it went into the sciences, and now it's bringing back the duality of who we are, and it includes it under science. I like that a lot. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. And even you take that scientist, how do you talk about structure if there is no boundary? I mean, Kelly has been talking about these things for years. How do you talk about structure if there's no boundary? So you have to have the me scientist that is exploratory, that has a concept of the whole, what it is. And then you define a boundary that allows you to structure, that allows you to comment, that allows you to channel.
That's Kelly's first question, right? What's the boundary?
Always.
Yeah. So
That's
then
the
you can
first thing
decide
of
leverage.
thinking. What is the boundary? How do you know, your net, you know a fisherman, where do you throw your net? So you are at the bank and you think that you see birds at sea, you are on your boat, you see birds kind of diving somewhere and coming out. There are fish, there's fish there, you know,
Yeah.
like sardine. So now you come across this, where do you cast your net? So you took from the general, from observing what birds are doing. It's not your concern, it's birds. But you took that information and that give you that and help you to say, probably, if I cast my net there, right? If I cast my net 10 degrees northeast and at this radius, I'm going to have a bounty.
Mhm.
That's the probability. And then you try. And then you get more information. There's a feedback. That's always the process at play, always. We can only think about two things at the same time. No more than two. People think 7, no, it's 2. It is 7 or 8 sequence quickly. But as a whole, is always 2 things.
Well, in fact, the hypnosis technique, 7 plus or minus 2, says that if you give a person 7 facts in a row, plus or minus 2, somewhere between 5 and 9, the critical faculty explodes and a person cannot think critically anymore. That's why these sales guys get up and they just rattle through key points really quickly, is to confuse the critical faculty, the critical faculty of the brain. And so that comment, Manu, people know that. I also want to say that this boundary conversation, Joe brought this up a while ago, and inspired me. I took the maps from Synergetics 2 that Kelly sent out a while ago. I think it's on page 120, talks about this stuff as 526, I think, in the book. But here are our boundaries. I was talking with Susan during the week, and we have boundaries, macro boundaries and micro boundaries. You know, we tend to think of things in terms of like 2D maps stacked on top of each other. I want to see these 18 me's as like, okay, here's a map of me. And then, okay, that's number 12. Now here's another map of me, that's number 11. And I take these 2-dimensional maps and I'm stacking them. But that kind of avoids the embracing, permeating aspect of this. And I really believe that this map is helpful, because here I am sitting here in the conceptually finite, you know, synchronous, tunably synchronous, simultaneity of things. But all along the macro part of me, there's a boundary, because things start to get a little fuzzy in here. And then these things are like, whatever that word is there, withinness. It's like finite withinness, but it's non-conceptual. That's where the intuitive comes from. And then out here is withoutness, and it also is non-conceptual.
Yeah, and I would have,
Go ahead.
I would have put the intuition outside, not in.
Yes, it's
It's in
definitely
both.
outside. It's
It's in
outside.
both.
My apprehension, at least, is outside.
I think apprehension is right on the edges. It's on the edge here and on the edge here.
And you're right, it's micro and macro. I just tend to think of it as macro most of the time.
Oh, there you go. Well, you brought up that it was micro and macro, and that blew my mind. And I've been thinking about that. I've got another chart that I'm going to throw out here. Maybe I haven't built it yet, but this idea of me being in the middle. Here's me. This is from Synergetics 105620. Here's the me right here. And I'm right here. And micro, I've got these boundaries. I can't get any smaller than I can get. And macro, I've got boundaries. I can't get any larger than I can get. So I love this conversation about boundaries, and I love this dimensionality. Susan brought that to my attention the other day. I don't think of.
So
Go ahead. I always think, I like Susan. I think apprehend, it's out there. Well, no, it's apprehend in here too.
Right. Oh.
Yeah.
what is that withinness? I can't see.
Yeah, it's withinness.
Okay. And that's your intuition, right?
I don't know. I think intuition is both micro and macro.
Because it's both. Because intuition allows you to transcend the boundary. Because you have to understand your conscious mind creates the boundary, but your intuition is something that tells you that you should do something differently. So think about it in terms of an example of this would be how transcendentalists look at the world, or even that's a little too philosophical, but well, it's not a bad way of thinking about it. There are a number of ways to think about it. But to say that, okay, something, the world is telling you something about, how this is how society is structured, but something is telling you that that's just not right inside of you.
Yeah.
So your intuition is saying that this isn't right.
And I think that comes from the twilight, right? The twilight zone of almost relevant, both micro and macro, comes from that little fuzzy area. And we go, my family's telling this, my tribe is telling me this, but it doesn't seem right to me.
Right. Or, and society could be telling you something. So something like this is why, something like the civil rights movement is like, this is not right. That people aren't being treated equally.
Right.
Isn't meditation almost a volitional attempt to tune into that twilight zone of almost relevant and almost irrelevant?
Yeah.
Right.
But let's understand the basic. I'm not saying that we have understood it, but I just want to solidify with something. You are sitting somewhere and there are two poles. right? And you are the observer.
Mhm.
And things and a ball like a ping pong. Okay, let's just say you are watching the ping pong game.
Right.
You have two players that are alternatively on a table, sending ball alternatively. How is your head? How do you behave? How is your thought? Isn't your thought in between the two? And always doing this?
Pretty much.
One at a time. It's always one at a time, like this. Pulsating. That is the basic stuff. It is always, you cannot at a time look at the two players. You will not. You will not be living. The process of living and being tuned is in between. Always. And that is, I think this debate, we always in between something.
Mm.
And if the macro and micro are the basic dual always at play, we are in between, and we got to be conscious that we are in between those things. And then with lag, we've got to define where our boundary is in terms of what is relevant and what is not relevant. Otherwise, it's just fuzzy. So we define in thought irrelevancies. Otherwise, you cannot focus. Or you cannot focus. You have to take all the information that is swirling into you into symbols for you to remember. This is a symbol. And then now get into that symbol, focusing, dividing, to make sense of it. So that's also the duality of the intuit. And we saw it in 9 and 8, intuit, intuitive, and then discipline, focus.
Right.
It always goes with that. And we better understand that basic thing in order to generalize.
It's like coming up with a hypothesis and then proving it with a statistical model. That's 8 and 9.
But it's always sequential, isn't it?
Right.
You know, you cannot come with a hypothesis and proving at the same time. There's always a lag.
Right. You have the opinion of something.
Yeah. So this is an application of what goes on in nature in our
Right.
process of thinking.
Yeah, the lag is what allows
In
us.
the artifact that we design in order to understand, to experiment. It is an application.
Go ahead, Susan.
Manu is making it perfectly clear to me that the lag is what allows us to calibrate. It's us observing the lag that allows us to calibrate.
And how many
Numbers
times like
lags.
is what?
Numbers lag.
Yeah.
So,
how many-
words lead and numbers lag.
Yes.
But how
So
many
that's
times
8 and
do
9.
when my brain starts to lag, I get mad at myself. I go, I'm not getting this right now. And my brain
Right.
says, we need some lag. We need some lag to calibrate. Take it easy. And if I get frustrated because I'm lagging, I'm going to create hysteria with my lag. Or I hate to use the word hysteria. I'm going to
But it's right.
craziness. Yeah, I should embrace my lag. I can embrace my lag. Wow, this is great. What's the message here? Right?
Sometimes you got to sleep on it.
Sometimes I
Yes.
got to sleep on it. And then when I sleep on it, that little border of irrelevancy, that tantalizing almost relevance gets really clear in sleep time. That's that intuition that Anne's talking about, right? And they don't reinforce that in school. And maybe even in a creative writing class, maybe they do, maybe. But not in the sciences, I don't think.
And in brainwaves, you could look at that as moving from beta into alpha and theta and delta.
Right.
And if you got really crazy, you could go up to gamma.
Yeah. And Einstein said that no problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness that created it.
Mm.
And people don't understand this. Einstein solved relativity by sitting in a train dreaming about the train going by and hearing the sound go from high to low. And he follows.
That's not true. That's not true. That's also, it's not true.
Yeah, but don't tell me that right now, Manu. I'm trying to make a point. Well, it's like Newton having the apple fall out of the tree, right? But the idea was that any great scientific truth that can be proven starts with a dream, starts with somebody's idea someplace that didn't make any sense at all. That's that intuition part.
Yeah. But I would say Einstein, imagine relativity relation, because he worked at the patent office for years in Bern. That was it. It was new, but the advantage that he had over the other guys, and people don't know that, is that Einstein was forced to be very, very practical by that job.
As a patent office.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the when you are rejecting a patent, you have to give the reason why. In other words, you really have to have compared it in unison with another invention. Can you imagine what it takes to sit down and just do that for hours and hours, day after day, year after year? It's huge.
Without a computer.
Without a computer.
Yeah.
With a sliding rule. I don't know, Joe, you don't know what the sliding rule
I
was?
do. I looked them up online. I've seen them.
Yeah.
I think my father has one still.
I have one over here. And it's probably one my father used at General Dynamics Astronautics to build the Atlas missile. I have got a book over here on my shelf, Top Secret, How to Build an Atlas Missile. And I'll bet you there's a slide rule stuck in there somewhere. Wow. Has the universe changed in the last 50 years? Wow. Any more comments and questions? And we ain't seen nothing yet. The next 50 years are going to be absolutely freaky.
No, the rate of acceleration is accelerating.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love watching my children, as this next iteration, watching them grapple with it, watching them lean into it. It's so fun, and they can do more than I can. And yet they still have that loving sense of connection back. Mm-hmm. And understand that the reason they get to do it is because I'm still here. I'm still doing my thing.
Right. Okay. What a great conversation. I think, though, that we've even though we started a bit beyond time, I don't want to go too much later. It's approaching midnight for Joe.
It's more than approaching 1 a.m.
Yeah, it's approaching 1 a.m. and it's almost time for Manu to wake up. So
he hasn't even had his coffee yet.
Yeah. So we'll leave it right here. Where were we here? What did we leave off? We left off at 8.
Yeah, so it was 7. We have 7, 6,
we'll
and
go
5.
through 7, 6, 5. Wonderful. Okay. So so Kelly, how you feeling and what's your takeaway today?
Well, I made it. Yeah. I don't know how I feel today. I feel like when I'm looking at these me's, I'm looking at why number them. From 18 to 1. It all seems to me that if it's me, it's all part of me, and that breaking it out doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because it's all there. It's just an acknowledgement of all these different aspects of me. So that's my immediate thought on the matter. So, Susan, how do you feel and what do you take away?
I feel joyous at being able to be in this space with you all. I'm taking away an appreciation that all of these me's are always operational simultaneously, and they're permeating each other. But not only just the me's, the cosmic integrity, the nature, the unknown. And it's funny, I think we're all tuned slightly differently. I am tuned in between, and that's my happy spot. So I love getting to explore that with all of you. Joseph, how are you feeling and what are you taking away?
I'm feeling great. It's wonderful to be able to spend this evening with everyone. I'm so happy to see everybody. It's I've actually been away from Zoom for a week, so this is actually like this is pretty cool. So this is I'm really appreciating this moment. Congratulations, Anne, for the next 2 weeks. That was amazing news. So that's wonderful to hear, and I can't wait to hear about how things go when you get back in 3 weeks. I'm taking away a lot. I think I had a moment to kind of like look at this, and I do see the process of what it means to be me, and when I look at this, I look at a lot of this in the sense that I think we're actually proving a lot of these things today, that Bucky had these insights that many years ago that are now being proved through neurology and the behavioral sciences. I really do feel strongly that 18 and 17 were a really good example of how our intuitive thinking and our conscious mind work, and how like essentially we what we do intentionally and what we do unintentionally. And so then you can kind of start to see the evolutionary aspect of things, of how we think, how our memories, how we work with our memories in oral cultures versus actually written cultures. And what do I mean by that is that if we're just communicating and not writing things down, then we're only learning what we can remember. But now if we're writing things down, what does that mean? We're actually creating something to build on. And that's was number, I don't know, the statistical one, the written communication, the social history. And then from there we can develop context for things and why we believe certain things that we do. And then we can recalibrate from there. And then I start to see the importance of the chronophiles, Bucky's chronophiles as well. So, I mean, there's a lot. I learned a new word, cosmography. So did I say that correctly?
Cosmogony.
Cosmogony. Geez, so sorry.
I still haven't learned it. I remember the word, but I'm still not sure.
Yeah, maybe I actually shouldn't say I learned it yet. So I'm still learning new words.
Yeah.
And then there's one part about it with bounded rationality, but I'm not going to go into that. I really think that I could talk about that with the circles, with intuition, but that's a whole, maybe I'll cover that next week. But Anne, how are you doing? What are you taking away from today?
Thank you, Joe. Okay, I really enjoyed the discussion today, and when everybody was discussing this whole thing about intuition, it's the way we learn things, right? Like previously, we learn a whole bunch of stuff, and then as we go on and we learn more, and it starts to connect a lot of the dots, right? So just now, the discussion about intuition being without and also within, I found it so powerful, because when you talk, I think, was it Joe, you mentioned that without is you're pushing the boundaries, yeah? Mm-hmm. And then and at the same time within also we can push boundaries, and then within also allows us to have that awareness, of self and others. So it's a whole in and out there for the way I look at the way intuition works, right? So that was very powerful for me. And the other one is, so the question, I have a question here. How do we then, what happens when intuition tells someone to do evil, right? So where is that coming from? And we can't encourage that. We know that we have to nurture humanity, right? So the humanity will get people to do things for humanity rather than self-interest. Yeah. So I'm going to grapple with that for a bit. And thank you, Joe, for reminding us words lead and numbers lag. Yeah, it's very powerful. And Steve, you're right about intuition not encouraged in science. Yeah, if you look at any book out there, there's nothing, all textbooks don't tell you to think about, come up with your own hypothesis and your own, what is it that you're observing? And which is really counterculture to classical education during the time of Aristotle and Plato. They observed and they discover and explore as part of education. And that was completely taken out. And the last bit is, Kelly, yes, I'm going to think about why number me over the next week till I see you guys again. So thank you very much. And Manu, how do you feel and what is your takeaway?
I feel good. I feel alive. I feel grateful. The whole of this discussion, I would just note that the 18 me is the whole of me. That's the first thing. And that effectiveness is a child of discipline. And I'll add incisive discipline. And that other words that that were highlighted here that I think are important is sequencing, directing, and foremost, boundary. And then, Anne, you talk about, or Joe, about pushing out boundary. The scientific process is not always pushing out boundary, right? It is sometimes caving in the boundary. It's proven sometime, and then new facts come to disprove something. And we have to reconsider. Maybe cut out like a cancer, part of it out of your field of consideration. It becomes in the back burner. Irrelevancy, we discussed that some time ago, is putting in the back burner. Because there will be time, maybe, that is going to become part of what is considered in order to understand better. And that's what I take away. So effectiveness and what Bucky talked today about discipline. A disciplined and incisive approach is quite crucial to me. If there is one thing that you have to take, I would say it is the discipline. And we all on this call prove it that day in and day. I mean, Anne was just kind of, I don't know how many messages do you send me? Where is the link? Where is the link this morning? That is discipline. Most people, they will just abandon and go. I can't get into this call. This guy, they wouldn't do anything. That is commitment and discipline. Thank Anne. Who's left? Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Well, I'm real excited. This has been a real, it's an amazing conversation because I'm really hooked on me. I really like the idea of like understanding how I can relate and interrelate in my environment. And we got 18 of these puppies. And like, I never thought of myself as a scientist, but thanks to Bucky, I'm saying, well, let's examine the scientist part of me, right? Because there's definitely a part of me that is creative, intuitive on the top end. Why not be, and now, I can manipulate my computer and bring up graphics and do things like that. So I can take the imaginative ideas, the intuitive ideas, and I can kind of make them solid. So maybe that's a little scientific. I don't know. So I'm excited about learning about me. And I don't want you to wait on this number thing, because as soon as Kelly said the numbering thing, because listen, the number thing bothered me from the beginning. When we did the 1056 tens or 1056 10, he went down through and put universe at the bottom of the freaking list and cosmic integrity at the top. And I'm going, what the hell? Why are these numbered this way? So this is what I came up with. I was looking at the electromagnetic spectrum, and I was looking how infrared is very low frequency down here at the bottom. Some of these frequencies are so low, they look like they're as high as mountains. They just big. And then up at the top towards the cosmic rays, the gamma rays, Susan talked about doing gamma ray analysis. Those things are so fast and so, but every one of them have a number, so that we calibrate them to know that they're there. But they exist everywhere in the universe. Infrared is everywhere. It permeates everything and it embraces everything. And on the other end, the gamma rays permeate everything and embrace everything. The reason why we give them a frequency number is so we can identify them and say, oh, that's what that is. So that's I had that big insight this week. Why the freaking numbers? And I thought of the electromagnetic spectrum, and all of these radiations are defined with a number. And that's basically what Bucky has done. Maybe ponder that for the next couple of weeks and come back and tell me what you come up with. So this has been really a thrill for me, and been no challenge to get off this train early. We maybe could have stayed around a little longer, but I'm so delighted and I'm worried about a time, and I just appreciate every one of you so much. Any feedback you have, send it my way. If anybody wants to conduct these calls, let us know. You can do it.
No, we like you. You do.
All right. I
All right.
agree.
When you're ready, like step into it. It's a mess over here. I'd love to share it. You guys are the greatest. And I'm going to do what I can to get the links resolved. There's no confusion next week. And as I told you, I'm going to get this recording out right away. Apologize for the link screw up. And so anybody who wants to catch this can catch this. In fact, I'm going to take all the last 5 programs that we've done on each step of these hierarchies and put all the links right there. So if somebody wants to spend 20 hours and go through it, they can. Okay, everybody.
Not likely to be here with you next week. My daughter just graduated college, and I
Oh,
had a
congratulations.
celebration dinner with
Wow.
all the nieces and nephews.
That's awesome.
You got to
Congratulations.
invite our next call.
So I will watch their recording.
No, I say you
Yeah,
have
invite
to
her.
invite your daughter at next call.
Yeah, have her on the
Let it
call.
just try participation.
It's Saturday night, and she's 22, guys. I'll see.
Ah,
She's not used to the idea of lagging around on one of these phone calls.
Yeah. But she would be an interesting guest.
Yeah, and that just was another thing. The numbering of these things is about lagging, so we can ponder them. If they weren't numbered, they wouldn't lag, and so we couldn't ponder them. There's a couple ideas for you, Ann and Kelly. All right, anybody else?
Love you, Kelly.
See you later.
Love to the family.
Thank you.
All right. See ya, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
cool.
Ken, bye-bye.
Hang on.
Hey, Steve, how do you feel? How do you think it was? I think it was good.